Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Let's get started. Our top focus tonight, a day before the crucial US-Iran talks. While there is hope of a breakthrough, fears of an escalation remain high. While the US has been expanding its presence in the region, Iran reportedly unveiling a new underground missile base. Where do things stand right now ahead of the crucial talks? Unpacking all of this and more. Also on the show for you tonight, what is the sentiment on the ground among the Ukrainians about territorial concessions? We tell you what a new survey says. You don't want to miss this. The nuclear balance is shifting fast. We tell you how the rules of the game seem to have changed. A detailed story coming up. All this and lots more coming your way.
In order for talks to actually lead to something meaningful, and that includes the range of their ballistic missiles, that includes their sponsorship of terrorist organizations across the region, that includes the nuclear program, and that includes the treatment of their own people.
Amid growing uncertainty, Iran and the US have agreed to hold talks in Muscat on Friday. The US wants ballistic missiles to be on the discussion table, the very idea that Iran detests. In fact, the US Secretary of State made it clear that the talks will be meaningful only if Tehran agrees to talk about aspects like the range of Iran's ballistic missiles and its sponsorship of terror outfits, as the other side calls them.
I think in order for talks to actually lead to something meaningful, they will have to include certain things. And that includes the range of their ballistic missiles. That includes their sponsorship of terrorist organizations across the region. That includes the nuclear program, and that includes the treatment of their own people.
Fears of an escalation remain high as the US has been expanding its presence in West Asia with warships and fighter jets. US President Donald Trump continuing to pile up pressure on Iran, refusing to rule out military action. In fact, Trump wants that Iran's supreme leader should be worried. Listen in to what he said.
Should the supreme leader in Iran be worried right now?
I would say he should be very worried, yeah, he should be. As you know, they're negotiating with her.
Now, as per reports, mediators from Qatar, Turkey and Egypt in the latest have presented Iran with a framework for talks. And according to this proposal, Iran would commit to zero enrichment of uranium for 3 years. After that period, it will agree to limit uranium enrichment to below 1.5%. Additionally, the mediators reportedly proposed that its current stock of enriched uranium would be transferred to a third country. The framework also entailing Iran agreeing not to transfer weapons and technologies to its regional non-state allies. However, Iran has refused to cave in to any such demands until now. Tehran chose a peculiar way, in fact, of reminding the US earlier to think twice before making any aggressive maneuvers. IRGC's aerospace commander reportedly unveiled a new underground missile base. On this occasion, he also highlighted that Iran had strengthened its deterrence power, according to him, by upgrading its ballistic missiles. Ballistic missiles are rocket-propelled weapons that deliver warheads containing conventional explosives or even biological, chemical, or nuclear munitions over varying distances. Now, it's worth noting here that Iran already has 5 underground missile cities in various provinces, including Kermanshah and Semnan. Its range of ballistic missiles is possibly the reason why the US has a lot to be concerned about when it weighs possible strikes on Iran. Let's just break this down for you further. As per US estimates, Iran has the largest stockpile of ballistic missiles in West Asia. Israel is traditionally in striking distance of these missiles. And the arsenal comprises multiple missiles which have a range of 2,000 kilometers. Sejal, for instance, is one of the most potent missiles as it can fly at over 17,000 kilometers per hour. Its new model being developed, reportedly, will have an expected range of 2,500 kilometers. Others can also fire munitions 2,000 kilometers away, as you can see. Now, Iran also has other long-range missiles. This includes Ahmad with a range of 1,700 kilometers, Hajj Qasem with a range of 1,400 kilometers. That's not all. It also possesses short-range missiles like Zulfagar. Zulfagar with a 700 kilometers range, also Shahab 1 with a 300 kilometers range. Another formidable weapon in Iran's arsenal is the Abu Mehdi long-range anti-ship cruise missile with a range exceeding 1,000 kilometers. It also poses a threat to US naval forces as it is designed to evade ship defenses. Now, all of this assumes significance given the belligerent posturing of the two sides that we've been telling you about all throughout. A day earlier, a US fighter jet, remember, shot down an Iranian drone in West Asian waters. The Pentagon said the drone was approaching an American aircraft carrier and was brought down in self-defense. Meanwhile, the IRGC has seized 2 oil tankers with foreign crews for allegedly smuggling 1 million liters of smuggled fuel, while it's still unclear as to what flags the tankers were carrying. But this marks heightened tension amid increasing US naval presence there. With repeated threats of intervention by America and Iran's crackdown on the protests, it is apparent at this point that Trump has a lot more at stake in the current geopolitical climate. In fact, all eyes are now on whether the upcoming talks can actually lead to a breakthrough, or will things escalate further? On to Ukraine now. It has seen bloodshed and destruction for close to 4 years since Russia started that invasion. Even as the trilateral talks between the US, Ukraine and Russia have taken place, Moscow's attacks continue unabated. In the latest, at least 2 people were injured in Kiev owing to an overnight strike by Russia. Civilian infrastructure, including residential buildings and cars, incurred damage. Other parts like Sumy were also targeted. As attacks have become almost a daily affair, the public opinion on the ground, meanwhile, has shifted considerably in favor of peace, it seems. A latest survey conducted by the Kiev International Institute of Sociology threw up a rather startling picture. Let's just break this down. While 82% of Ukrainians firmly opposed any territorial concessions in May 2022, 40% are now willing to give up Donbass in exchange of security guarantees. And this has been the biggest sticking point, remember, as the Ukrainian president has consistently refused to cede this region, 90% of which is reportedly controlled by Russia's forces. Not just that, the survey also indicating considerable angst among people, with 42% backing the view that the Zelensky government is completely tainted and should not continue after the war. And these are key takeaways. The survey also coming at a point when battlefield losses for Ukraine have been mounting. And in a rare assessment, Zelensky admitted that over 55,000 of his country's troops had been killed, besides countless others considered missing. And he also disclosed that 183 attack drones were deployed by Russia. Out of a significant number were shot down. Out of that, a significant number were shot down. Meanwhile, the U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff announced that Ukraine and Russia have agreed to exchange 314 prisoners. The first such exchange in 5 months, in fact. Apart from that, there was no substantial outcome from the talks as such, but Witkoff expressed confidence that discussions between the countries will continue, with additional progress anticipated in the coming weeks. Subsequently, Zelensky confirmed that 157 Ukrainians, comprising civilians, armed forces personnel, and National Guard officials, are returning from Russia. They have been in Moscow's captivity since 2022, reportedly. Similarly, Russia's defense ministry released images of its prisoners of war boarding a bus en route to Moscow. Undeterred by these assurances, Ukraine continued its diplomatic offensive. In the latest, Ukraine's deputy prime minister accompanied over 60 foreign diplomats to see the damage inflicted on a thermal power plant in Kiev. Envoys were seen walking through the ruined facility, getting a glimpse of Russia's endeavor to knock out power and heating, even as the temperatures hover as low as minus 20 degrees Celsius. On the other side, the Polish prime minister began his visit to Ukraine and paid tributes to the fallen Ukrainian soldiers alongside Zelensky. The Ukrainian president thanked Poland for its support and also discussed joint defense programs and potential co-production of drones and other weapons. Zelensky underscored the need to secure reliable security guarantees for Ukraine. While the timeline for future talks remains uncertain, it remains to be seen whether Ukraine will consider ceding territory as a compromise to bring an end to that war. The nuclear balance seems to be shifting fast. The world is moving towards a rather dangerous, unpredictable trajectory. A nuclear weapons control treaty between the US and Russia has expired. The Pentagon says the US and Russia are working to re-establish high-level military-to-military dialogue, but the rules of the game seem to have changed. Trump now wants China to be part of it. But Beijing says it's not interested, as it races to build the weapons of mass destruction at breakneck speed. A new nuclear era seems to be taking shape, and the rules are fast changing.
The nuclear shadow is lengthening as the world's final arms control safeguards vanish into thin air. A third titan has entered the arena, shredding the old rules of engagement. Beijing is no longer playing catch-up, it is sprinting toward nuclear primacy, and it has just told the West to back off. President Trump wants Beijing to join the negotiating table.
The president's been clear in the past that in order to have true arms control in the 21st century, it's impossible to do something that doesn't include China because of their vast and rapidly growing stockpile.
But the Chinese leadership has issued a cold, hard no. Beijing argue it is fundamentally unfair for the U.S., which possesses thousands of warheads, to demand reductions from a nation still building its primary deterrent. Russia and the U.S. control nearly 90% of the world's nuclear weapons. While Russia maintains 309 warheads, U.S. has 3,700.
China has always maintained that the advancement of arms control and disarmament must adhere to the principles of maintaining global strategic stability and ensuring that the security of all countries is not compromised. China's nuclear capabilities are of a totally different scale as those of the United States and Russia, and will not participate in nuclear disarmament negotiations at this stage.
But the reality on the ground is shifting at a terrifying pace. China is currently overseeing the fastest expansion of its nuclear arsenal. From massive silo fields in the western deserts to advanced road mobile launchers and stealthy ballistic missile submarines, Beijing is moving to match the firepower of the traditional superpowers. For Pentagon, this creates a strategic bind. The US is already balancing nuclear deterrence against Russia. A rapidly expanding China means planning for two major nuclear rivals at once. That means more spending, more deployments, and more risk.
Before we go on any further, a quick look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. A new deadly virus has been found in Bangladesh, telling you all that you need to know. A bronze statue of Mahatma Gandhi has been stolen in Australia, getting you the complete story in just a bit. A bus-sized jellyfish is the latest reminder to us all about how little we know about our planet and its creatures. Getting you the complete story in just a bit. All this and more coming up. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has apologized to the victims of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. This after he faced criticism for appointing Peter Mandelson as Britain's top diplomat to Washington, despite his involvement with the late sex offender allegedly. Starmer said no one knew the depth of the relationship between Epstein and Mandelson, adding that he will do everything in his power to ensure accountability is delivered. He apologized to Epstein's victims for believing Mandelson's lies and appointing him. Listen to this.
I'm sorry. Sorry for what was done to you. Sorry that so many people with power failed you. Sorry for having believed Mandelson's lies and appointed him. And sorry that even now you're forced to watch this story unfold in public once again. But I also want to say this. In this country, we will not look away. We will not shrug our shoulders. And we will not allow the powerful to treat justice as optional.
Now, just for context here, the leader has been facing criticism in Britain, with the Labour members warning that Starmer's days as Prime Minister may now be numbered. Mandelson is facing allegations of misconduct while he was in the British cabinet. The charge basically is that he leaked sensitive information to Epstein as business secretary. And on Sunday, Mandelson quit as a member of the Labour Party and announced his resignation from the House of Lords. Switching gears, Prime Minister Modi today briefed the Rajya Sabha amid a walkout by the opposition. Before the opposition leaders made their way out, there was ruckus in the upper house of the parliament. The opposition chanted slogans as the Prime Minister was trying to speak. Many leaders then continued their chants and protests outside the chambers. Here are some key highlights.
Please take your seat. No, please take your seat. Now, when the Prime Minister is on his legs, please take your seat. आदरणीय सभापति जी, राष्ट्रपति जी के अभिभाषण पर आभार व्यक्त करने के लिए मैं उपस्थित हुआ हूं। Please take your seat. This is not correct. Please take. आज पूरा विश्व ग्लोबल साउथ की चर्चा करता है, लेकिन उस चर्चा के सूत्रधार के रूप में आज भारत वैश्विक मंचों पर ग्लोबल साउथ की बुलंद आवाज बन गया है। अनेक देशों के साथ आज भारत फ्यूचर रेडी ट्रेड डील्स कर रहा है। पिछले कुछ ही समय में दुनिया के महत्वपूर्ण 9 बड़े देशों के साथ 9 बड़े हमारे
ट्रेड डील हुए और उसमें मदर ऑफ ऑल डील एक साथ 27 देशों के साथ, यूरोपियन यूनियन के साथ। सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर के बाद एक वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर बना था, अब एक नए वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर की तरफ विश्व बहुत तेजी से आगे बढ़ रहा है। और सबसे बड़ी खुशी की बात है, सारी घटनाओं का और राजनीतिक तरीके से निष्पक्ष भाव से विश्लेषण करेंगे तो झुकाव भारत की तरफ है।
Russia is making spies out of pigeons. According to reports, a Russian technology company with reported close ties to Vladimir Putin's daughter, reportedly, is claiming to have turned pigeons into living drones. How exactly, you ask? Basically by implanting computer chips directly into their brains. The Moscow-based company says it has been testing so-called biodrones since November under a project reportedly codenamed PJN-1. Neural chips are implanted into the birds' brains with cameras strapped to their chests and flight paths dictated remotely by operators. According to its website, early real-world use of this has started. And what's the stated goal then? To apply biological carriers in situations where mechanical drones face range, weight, or other limitations. The initial tests involved pigeons fitted with a small controller, solar panels mounted on the bird's back, and a camera. The birds are reportedly fitted with electrodes, a small controller, solar panels, and a video camera. And this reportedly allows for the pigeons to be steered remotely by stimulating their brains, making them turn left or right. So it's essentially a remote control on the bird. The company says these biological drones can fly up to 400 kilometers a day without needing to land or recharge. Now, if true, this would make them more efficient than conventional UAVs. So it's quite significant. The company says it's now moving towards large-scale production. Its founder has said different species may be used depending on the mission. The company claims the technology is for search and rescue and industrial monitoring, but experts are warning the birds could easily be adapted for military surveillance and reconnaissance. The company has also experimented with controlling rats and cows using electrodes. Despite doubts about feasibility and ethics, the company has also reportedly received massive state-backed funding. According to the report, the company's funding is on a scale never seen before. Supporters including a government technology fund, reportedly created on Putin's orders, and a venture fund linked to a Russian oligarch. Now here's where things get even more interesting. The company also reportedly partners with AI Institute, Artificial Intelligence Institute, at the Moscow State University. This institute is headed by Katerina Tikhonova, widely reported to be Putin's younger daughter. Although Putin has never publicly acknowledged his daughters, they have become increasingly visible in state-backed projects. Tikhonova has previously spoken publicly about human brain interfaces, saying they help people realize their potential without mentioning her family ties. Now, coming back to this company we were telling you about, its head has openly spoken about creating what he calls Homo Superior, a new stage of humanity. As per reports on social media, he has even written about reprogramming Ukrainians after the war. And the company has released a video where the founder is showing the researchers directing chip-implanted pigeons to change direction mid-flight using computer commands. But there has been no independent scientific verification, reportedly, of these claims. Attempts to control animals are not new, of course. During the Cold War, the CIA, remember, experimented with dogs and cats in failed mind control projects, including acoustic kitty. All were abandoned as unworkable. And now the critics are saying that Russia's bio-drone project raises questions about ethics, about surveillance, and also militarization of science. Throat swabs unlocked a new puzzle for health experts, it seems. Bangladesh logging mystery cases mimicking Nipah, and scientists are now racing to decode a mystery that has been hiding in plain sight. For years now, clinicians tracked the deadly Nipah virus, but new genomic sequencing has unmasked a different intruder, a novel bat-borne orthoreovirus known as PRV. Scientists reviewing stored throat swabs from patients originally suspected of having Nipah found that 5 individuals were actually fighting this entirely different emerging threat. And this is a wake-up call for global health surveillance. The initial cases in Bangladesh were found negative for Nipah virus. But when the samples were put through genetic sequencing, the scientists detected PRV, and the researchers were able to grow the virus in culture from the samples of 3 patients. All patients had recently eaten raw date palm sap, which is also a food source for fruit bats and the main route of NIV spillover from bats to human beings. The finding also raises concerns about hidden zoonotic threats in regions where Nipah is endemic. And the discovery comes just as India successfully declared a high-stakes victory against the Nipah outbreak. 2 cases, remember, were identified in West Bengal. After that, the Indian health officials found 196 contacts linked to the confirmed cases, and they were identified, traced, monitored, tested, with all tests for the virus negative. But while India's containment of Nipah offers a blueprint for success, this new discovery in Bangladesh proves the viral landscape is far more crowded than previously thought. Shifting focus now to the United States, where Donald Trump is facing growing political pressure after a series of election setbacks and warning signs for his party ahead of America's midterm elections. The recent voter swings and the Democratic gains in key elections are raising alarm bells within the Republican ranks, especially after a shock result in Texas. Trump had sounded confident, urging his supporters to turn out for the Republican candidate in a state Senate race in Texas. But then just a day later, the Democrats won. And this is despite the fact that Trump had carried that district by 17 points in the year 2024. And after the loss, the president played it down, calling it just a local race and saying he was not involved. But then the numbers tell you a completely different story. The Texas result showed a 30-point swing towards Democrats, a shift that even Republican leaders say cannot be ignored. The Florida governor, meanwhile, called it a warning sign for the party. And the political experts agree, by the way. They say that the result exposes real vulnerabilities for Trump's Republicans, and the problems may not be temporary. You see, Texas is not an isolated case. In Minnesota, for example, Democratic candidates won with 95% of the vote. In Tennessee, Republican margins shrank by more than 12 points. In Virginia, meanwhile, Democrats swept key state races. Together, these results pointing to a pattern and growing voter dissatisfaction with the Republican Party. What could be the reason behind this is the immediate question then. Analysts are saying that one major factor is the cost of living. Many Americans continue to struggle with high prices for food, housing, energy, and they say Trump appears increasingly focused on foreign policy and personal projects rather than actual daily economic pressures. In fact, the new Gallup data is showing just how deep the public anxiety has actually become. About 1/3 of Americans now say politics and government are the biggest problem facing the country. And that makes the US among the most politically anxious countries in the world. Not just that, the poll also revealing a sharp generational divide. Americans under 35, the youth, are most worried about affordability, about food, rent, housing, while the older Americans, meanwhile, are more concerned about democracy and governance. And this mix of economic stress plus political distrust can destabilize democratic systems. On the right, public criticism of Trump has remained rare, but some former allies are breaking ranks. Former Congresswoman, meanwhile, Marjorie Taylor Greene, has accused Trump of abandoning his populist base and serving big donors, a sign, in a way, of growing cracks within the MAGA movement. And Trump, for his part, says his party can defy history. Traditionally, the party in power loses seats in midterms, but then Trump insists his record will break that pattern. In fact, he suggested that any losses would be due to bias or fraud. He even called for federal control of the elections in some states, despite the Constitution giving that power to the states. Still, there is one bright spot for the Republicans. The party has more than $95 million in campaign funds, and that is far more than the Democrats' war chest, a key difference here. But then, can money alone help Trump's party overcome the voter frustration? That remains to be seen. Amid the US-Iran developments that we've been telling you about, the talks set to take place on Friday, let's just tell you more about where things stand right now between Israel and Iran against the backdrop of the developments. There's something interesting taking place, with business emerging to be bigger than politics, it seems. How exactly, you ask? Iranian products are reportedly finding their way to Israeli stores. According to a report in the Times of Israel, at some stores, shoppers can find goods that have continued to reach Israel despite the ban on trade. Just for context here, Israel's trading with the enemy ordinance prohibits conducting any economic or commercial activity, directly or indirectly, between Israel and enemy states, including Iran, Syria, Lebanon. And the curbs go both ways, basically. Iran has passed legislation over the years barring any trade or cooperation with Israel. But then how exactly are these goods even reaching Israeli stores then? The report says to get around the ban, importers make use of a loophole that basically allows them to buy Iranian goods from third-party markets in Europe and elsewhere, and then sell them in Israel as if they had originated in the third-party country. In other words, using the third country loophole plays a role. The report also says using this loophole, merchants, restaurateurs at a Tel Aviv spice market sell authentic goods from Iran. In fact, for years, reportedly, Iranian goods entered Israel via Turkey. But since that option is not there, the goods reach Israel via a third country. But that also means a jump in prices. Shifting focus, even as US President Donald Trump continues to claim great news on the economic front, layoffs are increasingly dominating the country's discourse. A lot has been happening. And in a big jolt to the media industry, the Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos, has laid off 1/3 of its workforce. Founded in 1877, the Washington Post is known for its watchdog journalism and has won 76 Pulitzer Prizes till date. Bezos, remember, bought the newspaper in 2013. Over 300 journalists have been laid off. And this includes almost all of its foreign correspondents, the New Delhi bureau chief, and those covering West Asia, China, Turkey, Iran. And as per reports, the newspaper was facing significant financial losses in the last few years. However, this crisis is not limited to the Washington Post alone, of course. According to a leading global outplacement firm, layoffs announced by US employers surged in January amid an uncertain economic environment. For instance, planned layoffs by US employers soared by 205% in the month of January alone. In total, over 100,000 people are being laid off. The layoffs are 118% higher as compared to January last year. And this is also the highest monthly layoff figure for the US since 2009. Multinational firm United Parcel Service topping the list with over 31,000 planned job cuts. Big tech firms also under the radar, as Amazon, remember, announced 16,000 employees will lose their jobs. As per estimates, artificial intelligence accounts for 7% of the planned layoffs. The prevailing market condition is believed to be one of the key reasons for the layoffs, in fact. Last year as well, the US witnessed a spate of layoffs across IT and other sectors, with Intel laying off 25,000 employees. Microsoft also witnessed 15,000 job cuts. With a slowdown in hiring as well, the job market in America remains rather volatile at present, to say the least. Switching gears, in the cold depths of Argentina, scientists came face to face with a reminder of how little we know about our planet. Argentine research vessel locking onto a bus-sized jellyfish, phantom-like 200 meters down in pitch black. Our next story telling you more about this sighting and how it could be rewriting what we know about the planet.
Oceans are the last true wilderness on Earth. A crushing, silent expanse where 95% of the territory remains a total mystery. It remains largely unexplored, with over 90% of marine species yet to be discovered. It produces over 50% of the world's oxygen. Houses the longest mountain range and holds rare minerals. And 94% of Earth's wildlife resides within its depths. Beneath the sunlit waves lies a vertical empire of darkness. And it is here that researchers just encountered a nightmare of epic proportions. A phantom jellyfish has been filmed drifting through the frigid depths of the Argentine Sea. This creature is the size of a city bus, with a bell spanning over a meter and 4 billowing scarf-like arms stretching 10 meters in length. It looks more like an alien spacecraft than a biological organism. These giant arms lack stinging tentacles. Instead, they act like massive velvet drapes to ensnare prey in the lightless void. Sightings are so rare that in over a century of maritime records, the phantom has been logged fewer than 130 times. Jellyfish are ancient, brainless and highly resilient marine invertebrates that have thrived in Earth's oceans for at least 500 to 700 million years. This makes them significantly older than dinosaurs. Scientists from the Schmidt Ocean Institute documented the creature. The team also recorded 28 possible new species, including worms, corals, sea urchins and sea snails, along with large reef systems full of marine life. We know about the surface of Mars than the deep ocean floor. Vast regions remain unmapped. Countless species likely exist without names, data or protection. The deep sea regulates Earth's climate, absorbs heat and stores carbon. It supports food chains that stretch all the way to the surface. As global temperatures rise, oceans absorb excess heat. Currents shift, oxygen levels fall, acidification increases. Even creatures living far from the surface are not insulated from change. The deep sea reacts slowly, but when it does, the consequences are long-lasting and hard to reverse. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Shifting focus now to Brazil, where hundreds of indigenous people in northern parts of the country have been protesting for 2 weeks outside a port terminal operated by US agribusiness giant. In fact, they are angry. They are protesting the dredging and development of Amazonian rivers for grain exports. And this protest is centered in the Amazon port city of Santarém in the state of Pará, the same region that hosted COP30, just for context. Indigenous communities say these rivers are vital to their way of life and to the survival of their culture. But they fear the government is opening their territories to large-scale agri-business projects. The indigenous community says their protest is meant to force the government to present real solutions and listen to their demands. By midweek, around 700 indigenous people from 14 communities had joined the demonstration. And according to advocacy group Amazon Watch, protesters have blocked trucks from entering and leaving. The terminal, Cargill says, it has no authority over the demonstrators' complaints. The company operates agricultural logistics networks across Brazil and employs about 11,000 people. At the center of this row was a decree that was signed by the president in August last year. The decree basically designates major Amazonian rivers as priorities for cargo navigation and private port expansion. Protesters are demanding that it be cancelled. And they also want a federal tender revoked worth about $75 million for managing and dredging the river there. This is one of the Amazon's major tributaries. Indigenous leaders call the project a project of death, saying that it threatens rivers, sacred sites, and traditional territories. Brazil's Ports Ministry has defended the dredging plan. It says the project is necessary to improve navigation safety and ensure reliable transport. But the protesters accuse the government of breaking a promise made at COP30. They say no projects were supposed to go ahead without prior consultation with the indigenous communities. The Ministry of Indigenous People has acknowledged the legitimacy of their concerns. It says no project can proceed without community consent. Still, protest leaders say they no longer want talks. They want the decree scrapped entirely. And the destruction of habitats for threatened dolphins, turtles, aquatic birds. For the protesters, this is not just an environmental issue. It's a struggle for their future, for their rivers, and for their right to be heard. A bronze statue of Mahatma Gandhi has been stolen in Australia. The figure was severed from its base and taken in the dead of night, reportedly. Victoria police saying a grinder was likely used to cut it off clean. And what remained was the statue's feet, still bolted to the concrete there. Police are now warning some scrap metal dealers to watch for attempts to sell cut bronze. And India's Ministry of External Affairs has condemned the theft and raised the matter with the Australian authorities. The 426-kilogram statue was unveiled in 2021 by the then Prime Minister. It was a gift from the Indian government and placed right outside the Australian Indian Community Centre. The Rajasthan-made bronze idol has a history of being targeted. It was vandalized within a day of its unveiling, later defaced with anti-India graffiti, and once targeted in an attempted beheading as well. And despite that history, authorities are saying There is no clear evidence that the theft was racially motivated, no slogans, no graffiti, no claims of responsibility either. Victoria's Premier, however, has condemned the act, pledging full support for its Indian diaspora. US President Donald Trump is taking steps towards installing a statue of famed explorer Christopher Columbus near the White House. He wants a replica of the statue that had been tossed into Baltimore's harbor during his first term amid protests against institutional racism. It was one of the many statues of Columbus that were vandalized around the same time, with protesters saying the Italian explorer was responsible for the genocide and exploitation of native people in the Americas. A Maryland lobbyist and president of the Italian American Organizations United said his group owns the statue and agreed to loan it to the federal government for placement at or near the White House. He said the exact timing for any planned installations was unclear, adding that it may be as soon as 2 weeks. The White House declined to comment on plans for the statue, but reaffirmed Trump's affinity for Columbus. The Trump spokesperson said in the White House, Christopher Columbus is a hero and he will continue to be honored by the US president. Trump endorsing a traditional view of Columbus as leader of the 1492 mission that marked the unofficial beginning of European colonization in the Americas and the development of the modern economic and political order. But in recent years, Columbus has also been recognized as a primary example of Western Europe's conquest of the New World, its resources, and its native people. Nike is facing a federal investigation, reportedly, that could have major implications for corporate diversity policies across the United States. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is probing whether Nike's diversity targets discriminated against white workers and job applicants. The investigation, which began last year, is now escalating into a court battle after the agency accused Nike of failing to fully comply with the subpoena. Nike is under investigation by the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission over allegations that its diversity goals for its American workforce violated federal employment law. The probe, first disclosed in a federal court filing in Missouri, centers on whether Nike's hiring and promotion practices unlawfully favored racial and ethnic minorities over white employees and applicants, reportedly. And according to the EEOC, Nike may have violated the Civil Rights Act of 1964 by engaging in what the agency calls a pattern or practice of disparate treatment. That includes hiring, promotions, demotions, layoffs, internships, mentoring programs, and leadership development initiatives. At the center of the investigation being Nike's diversity targets, the company aimed to have at least 30% racial and ethnic minority representation, reportedly, at the director level and above in the US by 2025, and at least 35% across its overall US corporate workforce. The EEOC says Nike has not provided enough information to support the investigation and is asking a federal judge to compel the company to comply with the subpoena and turn over all requested documents. Nike pushed back, reportedly calling the move an unusual escalation. The company says it has cooperated in good faith, sharing thousands of pages of documents and written responses, and says it is continuing to provide additional information. The investigation started in 2024 and was initiated by the current EEOC chair, who at the time was a Republican commissioner. Under EEOC rules, individual commissioners can launch investigations independently. And the case also comes as President Trump makes what he calls illegal DEI practices a priority of his second administration, directing the federal agencies to scrutinize and prosecute corporate programs that allegedly discriminate against white workers. Nike's diversity efforts previously drew attention after a Bloomberg analysis showed the company had one of the largest increases in non-white hiring among major US corporations between 2020 and 2021. The outcome of this case could set a precedent for how far companies can go in setting diversity targets and how federal law is applied to corporate DEI programs going forward. Gold prices have risen sharply in recent days, and Parisians are making the most of it seems. Gold buying agencies in the French capital are thronged by people amid record price push, the new record set by the yellow metal drawing in sellers from across the city. Touching record highs last week before stabilizing midweek, gold has surely made people think about selling old jewelry for some extra income perhaps. A retired Parisian couple also decided to encash their gold jewelry. The rapid price rise is also prompting people to empty safe deposit boxes to sell forgotten items.
Instead of keeping these jewelry at home, sleeping, well, they'll be useful for something. Maybe a trip or to help my daughters out too. A daughter who needs to do some work in her apartment. Yeah.
And the couple thinks that selling the jewelry is the best option when the metal is giving a good price in the market. And as the store director examined their modest pouch of gold rings and bracelets, both watched the jewelry pass from hand to hand.
I often check the gold prices because they go up and down. I looked and I saw that it's dropped by 15%, but still it remains a good price, and that's why we came to sell.
And with gold experiencing volatile prices, the volume of recycled gold has also increased in the market. But the store director says there is no thumb rule to decide if this is the right moment to sell.
No one holds the key to this equation today. Is it time to sell? Yes, these are still historical and interesting peaks, but I think we'll be in an upward trend this year, and so perhaps we should play the waiting game.
And while demand for new high-end jewelry remains strong, the surge has caused a shift in buying behavior, with some consumers opting to exchange old items for new ones rather than making outright purchases. Spot gold was steady on Wednesday after rising as much as 3.1% earlier in the session and climbing 5.9% on Tuesday. Global economic tensions continue to unsettle the markets, with geopolitical instability amplifying the situation. As of now, investors face both opportunities and risks. While the precious metal offers a safe haven, market participants must continue to keep an eye on volatility that continues to affect the price of the yellow metal. The former HR chief at Astronomer is stepping back into the spotlight reportedly after months of public scrutiny following last year's infamous Coldplay Kiss scam scandal. She is turning the attention into a major opportunity, in fact. The 53-year-old will now be speaking at a high-profile crisis communications conference, offering insight into how she managed the fallout and reclaimed control over her narrative. In the latest, she is set to be a keynote speaker at the PR Week 2026 Crisis Communications Conference in Washington, D.C. on the 16th of April. She resigned as the Chief People Officer at Astronomer, remember, following that scandal, and she will be sharing her story in a 30-minute discussion session. Ticket prices for the event ranging from $750 to $875. An eye-watering sum in a way for a conference that promises to teach attendees how to pivot at a moment's notice in today's unpredictable world. But it's her journey to redemption that also captured a lot of attention. The incident, remember, began in July 2025 during a Coldplay concert. There, she and her then boss were caught on the stadium's Kiss scam, sharing that moment. The camera zoomed in on them, exposing what was then seen by thousands of concert goers and millions watching the live broadcast. The fallout was also swift. She was then the chief people officer at Astronomer, resigned immediately after the incident, admitting she made a bad decision. And the CEO also stepped down from his position and has remained silent ever since. The scandal quickly became one of the biggest viral moments of 2025. And she became the target of intense media scrutiny. In interviews, she described the experience as wearing a scarlet letter, a label often unfairly placed on women in the public eye. While the event will also feature 12 other prominent speakers, it is her story of turning a scandal into an opportunity that has attracted a lot of attention and also the highest ticket prices reportedly. Despite the steep cost of entry, some people have been skeptical, even joking that the ticket price exceeds the cost of attending a Coldplay concert. With that, it's a wrap on this edition. Thanks very much for watching. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off.
And welcome to a brand new edition of South India, a daily dynamic show that will capture the pulse of southern states.
By blending the special stories, the breaking alerts, and the culture developments as well.
As Steven Spielberg's Grammy win gets in the EGOT status, we look at the other members of Hollywood's coveted club. Know what's rocking the fashion world out of its comfort zone. And meet actors Aldous Hodge and Matthew Lillard as they talk about this second season of Cross. All this and much more with me, Diksha Bisla, on WION at these times.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS centenary year, Kesariya at 100.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one. From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS centenary year, Kesariya at 100.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Beyond World is One. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and let's start this broadcast by taking a quick look as to what is making headlines at this hour. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that Ukraine is seeking for faster progress in the peace process. This after the Ukrainian and the Russian negotiators concluded 2 days of US brokered talks in Abu Dhabi. So far, the talks have only yielded the first prisoner swap. Mediators from Qatar, Turkey and Egypt have presented Iran and the United States with a framework of key principles to be discussed in talks on Friday this week. And reports say that the deal could include a commitment by Iran to significantly limit its uranium enrichment. Iran has said that it will stick to its stance of not discussing anything to do with the ballistic missiles. The British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, battling for his political future, apologises to the victims of Jeffrey Epstein for appointing the disgraced Peter Mandelson, a friend of the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, as the British ambassador to the United States. At least 18 labourers were killed and several others feared trapped following an explosion at an illegal coal mine in Meghalaya's East Jaintia Hills district. The exact number of the labourers present inside of the mine at the time of the explosion is yet to be ascertained.
आज भारत वैश्विक मंचों पर ग्लोबल साउथ की बुलंद आवाज बन गया है.
And speaking in the upper chamber of the Indian Parliament, the Indian Prime Minister has said that India is sealing future-ready trade deals, emerging as a global South's voice amid some strong growth and low inflation as opposition walks out during his reply to the motion of thanks. Heightened tensions unfold in Churachandpur district of Manipur as the demonstrators openly oppose the formation of the newly installed government. President Miguel Diaz-Canel insists that Cuba is prepared to hold dialogue with the United States but not under pressure. This after months of